Hi there, and welcome to the Living with SMA podcast. We're here to have conversations about living with spinal muscular atrophy. Throughout this podcast, we will be covering lots of different topics, from preparing for university, getting the most from your personal budget, sex and relationships, and lots more. So we invite different hosts from across the SMA community to come together here. We want to answer your questions, provide you with useful tips and recommendations, and also share personal stories. So please do reach out and connect with us here at the charity SMA UK. Thank you for listening, and we hope you find the podcast useful. Hi, I'm Martyn Sibley. Welcome to the latest episode of the SMA UK podcast. And today I'm really excited to be talking to Emma, Ross and Olivia about their experience with Risdiplam. We do touch upon sort of general thoughts around the other couple of treatments that have hit the SMA world in the last couple of years, and sort of generally their thoughts and relationship towards treatment. But most of all, we're doubling down with the fact that they then were went to a consultant and ended up being offered Risdiplam, and they've both, all three of them have been taking it now for a different amount of time, but throughout some parts of the last year or so. So they've all given really interesting, different experiential accounts. I certainly learned a lot from all three of them, and I know that you will too. And as ever, it'd be great to hear if you've had experience of Risdiplam. If that's the case, please do get in touch on the SMA UK social channels. And also just if you've got questions about Risdiplam or other SMA treatments, don't hesitate to get in touch with the charity as well. But let's get stuck into the three interviews and enjoy. Okay, so Emma Vogelman, who we've had lots of chats over the years. We've obviously, SMA community is quite a smallish community anyway, but we actually happen to live quite near each other as well. We were just saying before about both being based at Adam Brooks and all that kind of local stuff. But today's focus is around Risdiplam and your experience of ending up, taking it and how you've been getting on. And I'm sure through the three interviews we're going to be doing, there'll be, similarities and differences. It'd be great for the listeners to take away the different sort of value and the different points that are relevant to them. But I mean, Emma, just be great to start off just to tell the listeners a bit about you, a bit about your background, what you're up to work-wise, and just a bit of an introduction to you would be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Emma Vogelman. I'm 27, and I have SMA type 2. I am on a ventilator through a tracheotomy, but that's not as a result of SMA. It was actually because I contracted the swine flu back in 2009. And so from the effects of that, I've ended up using a ventilator through a tracheostomy. But from my perspective with Risdiplam, it sort of started quite a long time ago. I was really hoping to be able to access Spinraza when it came out. But because of the different criteria that were in place, I wasn't eligible for it. So part of that was because I've had a full spinal fusion and because I am on a ventilator through a tracheostomy. And those were all criteria which said no to Spinraza. And so when I found out about Risdiplam, I was really trying to push to get on it. Because for me, it just represented an opportunity that SMAers hadn't had before. And especially before Spinraza, there was no treatment available, and there was nothing that could potentially slow our decline or give us any type of improvement. And I was really aware that it wasn't going to be a miracle treatment, whatever it was. I mean, I wasn't going to hop out of the wheelchair the next day and, become a triathlete. Like, that's not a dream of mine. I don't know why that's my reference, but so I actually was pushing to get on it for some time, kept being told that it wasn't available, and that my doctors weren't 100% comfortable with prescribing it even when they were able to because it's a very new drug. They didn't know a lot about it and just didn't really feel that they had enough data behind it to recommend it to patients. So I sort of had to swallow that decision, which was a bit tough at the time, I must say. But I did randomly get a call one day from Edinburgh's hospital, saying that there was is it the early access to medicine scheme, something like that, that they were able to put patients on Risdiplam if they were eligible for it, and that essentially I needed to come in for an appointment that next week to be assessed for it, and that happened a little over a month ago, perhaps 6 weeks, 8 weeks ago.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for setting the scene. And I think that when you're talking about kind of Spinraza came on the scene in the first treatment, and there's been, I think for everyone with SMA and the families of people with SMA, there's always been I guess the kind of way I put it, like an interesting relationship with the treatment, because there's always been, will it come? When will it come? What will it be? What effect will it have? And a general sort of hope that something would come that would make life a bit, better from the very medical perspective. And then also, I know some of us, and you're quite similar to me, Emma, on that kind of activism side and the disability rights side. There is the kind of social model around, it's not the medical model of curing, it's the fact that society should reduce or get rid of the barriers that disable us, whether they're environmental, attitudinal, or procedural. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to project my personal views, but like I know for me, as someone with SMA type 2, that's always been quite a hard one to navigate, sort of where treatment fits in within that social model. And it clearly does. Like it's not binary. We need, we want to have good health, even sort of separate to the SMA stuff. We want to, eat well, sleep well, generally look after ourselves. And if there is some treatment, like now we have had come along, that can only be a good thing in terms of helping us be a bit stronger, or at least sort of less declining in our strength. But for many, many years, it was a bit of a hypothetical, wasn't it? So, like,
Yeah.
how did you, I guess, sort of very briefly, like when you were younger, what were your views of that, the potential of a treatment? And then how did you feel when one, and then two, and even three with Zolgensma, which may not be as applicable at the minute? Certainly at the minute, it's a lot more for sort of babies and younger people. But in essence, there's three treatments, right, for SMA now.
Yeah.
How did that feel when you first heard about it?
I think it's a really interesting point. I think as a kid, I was always sort of waiting to hear of the news of some type of treatment.
Yeah.
And I think at that time I was probably thinking it was going to be some sort of miracle treatment that would, like I said, you're out of the wheelchair tomorrow. Which,
Triathlon.
yeah, exactly. Getting that triathlon. Um, but I think what's important is that it represented a chance to stop the decline. And I think as you get older and you see abilities that you had in your teens start to go away, that becomes really scary. And particularly for me, sorry about the dog. Um, particularly for me, I lost a lot of my abilities when I contracted the swine flu. And to me, when I heard about Spinraza and now about Risdiplam, it just was like, this is your chance to not have that happen again. I lost my ability to speak and eat for over a year
Wow.
after the swine flu, and I just didn't want to have to repeat that process or repeat the loss and then repeat potentially having to relearn how to do those things in a different way.
Yeah.
So it was really important to me. And when I was told that I couldn't get Spinraza, I came out of my doctor's office and just started sobbing in the hallway, to be honest. it just felt like, that hope that you mentioned that we've all felt, was, oh, I'm really sorry about the dog.
Don't worry,
Um,
don't worry.
so I felt like that hope was being taken away from me.
Yeah.
But with this treatment, I think because it didn't have the restrictions in place that Spinraza did, it meant
Mm,
that I actually was eligible to get it. And when the doctors weren't super comfortable prescribing it, it just felt like, "Oh, really, this is another hoop I'm
mm,
jumping through." So I think in terms of where it sits within the social model of disability for me, and is that by stopping the decline, and if I get any improvement, great. But essentially, if I stop the decline, I can continue doing what I love for
yeah.
longer. And for me, very similar to you, that's my work, that's my
Mm,
activism, and it's my whole mission, if you like, is to try and improve the situation for other disabled people. And when I hear about these treatments, and the one that you mentioned that's mainly for um, infants and babies, it's really heartwarming, really, to see, because you just think that family and that kid won't have to go through what I did
mm.
potentially, because this is now in place. So it's hope from the get-go for them, which I just think is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. It's that advent of the three treatments, yeah, it was just basically from being a theoretical to a reality, and all three came within what a couple of years or so within
Mm,
each other. It's been an amazing time on that sort of medical research and advancement for the SMA community. So obviously you mentioned you heard about it, and sort of a few bits and bobs we'll explore it a bit deeper, but first off, just kind of information wise. So when you can touch on Spirit, obviously we're more talking to Risdiplam. Like,
mm.
where did you get information about it? What sort of sources and what kind of information did you uncover from your research?
Yeah, so for me, I was really fortunate at the time when a lot of the campaigning for Risdiplam was taking place. I was working at Muscular Dystrophy UK,
Hmm.
and they were obviously working really closely with SMA UK to campaign for access to this treatment. And so I was able to get a lot of my knowledge from my colleagues and from the press releases that we were putting out. I know SMA UK has been doing them as well. So that's where I was getting the information on how this drug is given to people, so that it was a liquid, it's every day. That's what I was hearing about. I was at the time, and I still am, not on Facebook, which I know a lot of there are a lot of community groups on Facebook, particularly for muscular dystrophy and SMA specifically. So I relied a lot on friends who also have SMA to do some snooping into what different people across the world were experiencing from the treatment, because I know in the US treatments were available sooner than they were here. So I wanted to find out what people's experiences were, and yeah, learned a lot. In terms of what were the realistic impacts that I could see from it. Because it's such an unknown at the moment, and people just haven't been on it for a really, really long amount of time to know that in any great detail, but just those little nuggets were helpful.
Yeah, that's great. So sort of like kind of social media of people sharing their experience maybe in other countries,
Mm,
and sort of other social media groups where there were people with MD and SMA that were talking about it and sharing different things. I guess that some of those links would have been from all sorts of sources, but yeah, kind of your kind of direct source was those groups. What kind of, I suppose, yeah, around risks and benefits, what was your broad takeaway on the risks and benefits of Risdiplam?
yeah, so the risks, I got a lot of sort of conflicting information about how it impacts fertility, which
Mm,
for me personally isn't a huge concern, but it did sort of make me think about the effect of the drug that I sort of assumed at some point I would definitely be taking. And I was a little bit concerned about hearing that it impacts fertility and it could have long-term effects even if you're not on it. So I think that was my biggest sort of, you know, take a moment to
Mm,
think about this moment. Improvement, I largely heard about it sort of having very small improvements, so like little like abilities that maybe you weren't able to do, but you were able to do in the more near past, if that makes sense.
yeah.
I think I had heard that the improvements were less than we're seeing with Spinraza. But that's sort of what I initially heard. But anything else, I didn't know much about the side effects or anything really until I had that appointment with my doctor.
Hmm. Cool. So got sort of 5 or so minutes I think left of our chat. There's a couple of bits I want to make sure we cover off. So I guess from that point of, you know, maybe say a little bit about when you made the decision to take it.
Mm.
Obviously, you said there was some conflicting things around risks and benefits, but ultimately, when and how you said to yourself, I'm going to go for it. And then how long was the process of sort of speaking to
Mm.
doctor and consultants to when you actually then received your first, dose?
Yeah, so I made the decision to go on it really before I went to see my doctor because I knew that it was my shot in a sense. Like it was my shot to stop decline. It was my shot to potentially regain some abilities back.
Yeah.
And when I was speaking to my consultant in that assessment appointment, she was going over the well-known side effects with me, and I was still thinking, yeah, I'm just gonna do it. I have to give this a shot.
Yeah.
And she did tell me that one person ended up having to drop out of taking it because the side effects were so bad. And I was a little bit concerned, but not concerned enough
Yeah.
to not take it. But again, it was to me, it felt like a really easy decision. So
Sure.
when I had that appointment, heard about all of the potential risks and side effects that were known about, and signed the consent form on that day.
Hmm.
And I had my blood work done that day, had sort of a couple of other chats with neuromuscular care advisors about what my abilities were so that they could obviously take, an understanding of me now before being on it. And then what am I like in, 6-month intervals on it? Am I seeing any improvements? So I would say it was about a month, 3 weeks to 4 weeks after that appointment that I got contacted by the special pharmacy that would deliver the Risdiplam. And I was able to get that delivery within a week of that phone
Okay.
call. So I've been on Risdiplam for about 3 weeks now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I don't know what. I mean, I've obviously spoke to some different people of sort of timescales and stuff, but I mean that seems quite quick, doesn't it? In terms of
Mm,
the whole process of being, signing consent form and then the different checks and then having it delivered and everything. Yeah, that seems like
yeah.
quite a speedy service, so to speak.
Yeah,
Um,
honestly, quicker than I expected it to
yeah.
be. I think even it actually took even longer than my doctor thought. I had an appointment booked with her over the phone to talk about how I was getting on, but I still hadn't heard from the pharmacy at that point. So obviously there is an expectation that this is all going to be going really quickly, at least in my area.
Yeah. Okay. And how many? Yeah, 3 weeks. Like, I don't know, whether it's kind of early days or have you seen any, changes already? And just generally, how's it been, sort of, fitting it in? What's the routine and how's it been sort of fitting it into your life to remember to take it as well?
Yeah, so I think the impact of my routine's been the biggest shift for me. I started out by taking um taking the medicine at lunchtime, so because it has to be taken after food, so
Mm-hmm.
I thought I would take it after my lunch. And to be honest, I found that a little bit restrictive. And sort of wish that I thought about that a bit more because the drug has to be refrigerated. You have to draw it up in a special syringe and give it within 5 minutes of drawing it up, or you just essentially throw out that
Right.
dose.
Okay.
So it does have to be done at the same time every day. And because I work full time and we're in a pandemic, so we have Zoom meetings all day, every day,
Mm,
I found it a little bit difficult to fit into my schedule. And I'm used to taking meds every day, but I usually take them in the evening, which I've now worked out is when I'm now going to be switching to
okay.
taking Risdiplam, so after my evening meal.
Yeah. So it's less conflicting with your work and everything like that.
Exactly. And it
Mm-hmm.
means that if you want to go out for the day, you don't have to worry about how you're going to bring this
Yeah.
with you if you're able to. I'm not actually sure if you are.
Right.
So that's my routine. I'm starting actually my evening dose today. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but overall, I think the side effects, at least in my sort of immediate friend group of SMAers, I think I had the worst side effects.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing terrible. Like, I was talking to my mom earlier about doing this recording with you, and I said, I promise I won't scare the children, about taking this. Um, so I had an upset stomach, for about 2.5 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It's still sort of on and off, which is a very common side effect. It's something that my doctor told me about in
Mm-hmm.
the initial appointment, so I knew to expect it. Um, and and they're sort of feeling a bit queasy, sort of a bit nauseous. That lasted for about a week, but again, it was nothing severe. Nothing as being bad enough that I've considered not taking it. I
Mm-hmm.
personally haven't seen any improvement yet, but it's really early
Yeah.
days.
3 weeks.
Yeah, it's really not very much time at all, but, um, I'm hopeful, and if it doesn't give me any improvement, that's fine. If it just allows me to keep the abilities that I have
Exactly.
now, where I'm able to work full time
Yeah.
and do the things that I love, then I'm really happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. And I've picked up that the side effects can obviously be different for everyone, and maybe even for you.
Mm,
Once you've got your body's got used to it, maybe that even calm down that kind of stuff. But yeah,
absolutely.
that's great. Obviously, yeah, to have shared. Not great that you had them, but great that you've been able to share your experience about it.
Yeah,
So
and I think for me, it's really important that others know that because I felt that I was the only one in my friend group who was experiencing that.
mhm,
And I know that if I looked on Facebook or other social media sites, I'd find other people who
yeah,
were
yeah.
experiencing that. So, yeah, don't be upset like me if all of your friends were feeling amazing on it and you're not. It'll be fine.
All right. Well, I've asked everything I wanted to cover, and obviously great insights and experiences for people to hear about your experience of taking Risdiplam. Is there anything that you didn't get to mention, or that you want to finish off saying, Emma?
I think the practical thing I wish someone had told me is it really doesn't taste very bad. It was
Oh,
something I was a little bit concerned about, whether that's silly or not. But you have to take this every day for potentially the rest of your life. So I'm really glad that it does not taste bad.
is there a flavour that you could describe?
Kind of like strawberry.
Strawberryish. Okay.
Yeah, but really not bad. So I feel like that's important and like,
Yeah.
yeah, makes the experience better for everyone. And I think if you're concerned about taking it, reach out to anyone that you know, like, or if you want to reach out to me to talk about your experience or your concerns about going on it. But for me, it represented the hope that I think we've all been waiting for our
Mm,
entire lives, and I wanted to at least give it a go. And
yeah.
I think if you're in a position to do that and you feel comfortable with that, then give it give it a try, but obviously do what's right for you. And yeah, no pressure. But if you need me, you can find me anywhere on social media.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Emma. Really, really good to chat. And yeah, we'll catch up again soon.
Sounds great. Thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, Ross Hovey, following on from Emma, we're all actually in the Cambridgeshire area, the three of us, which is more of a coincidence than design of this podcast episode. But a bit like with Emma, you and I know each other even more so because we live close by. So it's always nice to chat with friends and familiar faces. But obviously, as with Emma, it's going to be your experience of Risdiplam, really. So just for anyone listening that hasn't come across or met you before, can you just give us a bit of an intro about you, what you like doing, work, SMA, all that good stuff?
Okay, all right. So recently I've been following a lot of stuff on the internet. So and disabled people talking and introducing themselves. So I'm going to try and follow some suit. So I'm Ross, and who am I? So I work full time for a very large bank. Can't say why and who, sure. But if you look at me up on LinkedIn, it gives it all away anyway. But I have to not be representing that organisation.
Yeah.
I am 42 this year. Crazy football fan. Like gadgets, technology, smart homes, clothes, and cooking probably. And yeah, I happen to have spinal muscular atrophy.
Type 2, right? Yeah, cool. Yeah. Great intro. I love that. And yeah, I mean, I suppose obviously we're talking about Risdiplam, and it'd be great to get your views on sort of growing up. And I mean, it's only been a couple of years that any treatment's been on the horizon. So even up to a couple of years ago, what was your kind of relationship, so to speak, with the treatment? Was it something you were always very engaged with, hopeful for, something that didn't cross your mind much? But yeah, it's good to get that kind of before perspective.
Okay, so I think interestingly, and you might have seen today, I put on Instagram a little question about sort of the word ableism, and I think kind of it resonates with me. Although I've had spinal muscular atrophy all of my life, in my head, I don't really probably recognise that I do, and I haven't done much probably until my later life. So growing up as a teenager, I did all the things that my friends did. So in fact, I did things they didn't do. Like I had a part-time job in the supermarket. I went, went to uni, got a job, went to work, bought a house, went on holidays. Obviously, things are a little bit different. I always had someone with me and caring for me. So I guess, while I was eating myself and doing lots of things, so, and obviously I had my back operation at 17, which made me lose my ability to do things like do my personal care, but I could still feed myself. I mean, I went to work for the first, from 2001 to 2009, I went to work on my own without care and really struggled, but just kept pushing on because I think A, that's how I was brought up, and B, I didn't think anything different. As I started to decline when I hit my 30s, I think that's probably when I started wondering, would there ever be some form of, I guess, you think about, there's different spectrums. I think you don't just think about cure. We spoke about this. So you don't just think about treatment. We spoke about this before where, you often say, well, our bodies are too messed up to be cured. And I've never really thought about it until you kind of talked to me about that kind of thing. So I never thought about, but I probably did think about cures, not treatments. And then
it's an important definition, isn't it? Or not definition, important distinction.
Yeah. So I was probably always thinking about what if it was cured, not what if there was a treatment.
Yeah.
And then, I remember when I was young, I went to the Hammersmith, Professor Dubowitz, like the leading SMA chap there. And I remember, I think in my teens, there was a fire at the Dubovich Centre, and they lost a lot of research. And apparently, he was quite close back then to, identifying and understanding things. And I'd heard about the rats and the mice that they'd given, had been, got like SMA type characteristics, and they tried things on. And my dad, he always said to me, one day in your lifetime, there will be something for this. It will happen. And even now that I'm on Risdiplam, he's like, this is just the start. Like, there will be something else down the line. They'll already be working on other things. So I guess, I don't know if I've answered your question exactly, but I guess that was my take on it. So it was, just to kind of summarize for people, as I became more disabled, I think that's when I started to think about it. Yeah. I started to join, various Facebook groups. I started to research it. I heard about moonfish, and I was Googling moonfish and starfish. I think I even went up to Newcastle probably 5, 6, 7 years ago in desperate hope of trying to get on some early scheme. Because I think Risdiplam has been around in trials for quite a long period, so, under various fish names. I don't know why, like moonfish, starfish, fish.
That does answer the question well, and sort of moves us into my next question around information gathering. Sort of, you said like Facebook groups and social media. Speak a bit more about Spin, because obviously Spinrasa came first, and for many on Risdiplam, you couldn't be able to have Spinrasa, so then it was more possible to be on Risdiplam. I mean, that's kind of the general criteria. But just talk us through kind of how you found out about both, what kind of sources, and what you understood to be the risk and benefits from Risdiplam as well.
Yeah, so I'd been following various trials, and I'd heard about Spinrasa. I think I can't remember what name or guise that was under, but then that launched in America. I think it launched, on New Year. It was like, I want to say it was like near Christmas or New Year a few years ago. So I remember being sat in the lounge with one of my carers, and I was like, wow. And then one of my friends who's always got SMA, she texted me saying, we need to go to America and get this drug. And at that point, I didn't really know much about Spinrasa. And then I started just researching via like American news sites, just reading about it and the lumbar puncture. And then again, I never really thought about the challenges of having rods. I'm not a doctor, so it didn't even enter my head that it would be difficult. And then I just kept in touch with a lot of these things, and kept going to my SMA clinics once a year and asking about it, and the answers are all a little bit flaky. So I just, literally started like looking on the internet. And then I found on Facebook these groups like Treat SMA, and then the SMA UK updates, MD newsletter. And then I think what really brought Risdiplam to life for me was somehow I must be on some patient registry, and I got a questionnaire about a medicine, and would I like it delivered? Would I like it stored in a fridge? How would I feel about that? Lots of questions that made me think, well, hang on a minute, there's something coming here. Like, why are they asking all these questions? This is getting close. And then found out about it in America, and then heard about the early access medical scheme in the UK, but didn't really understand it. And I basically wrote to my consultant, and sorry to be negative about a local hospital, but initially they were not very, I'd say, transparent with their explanation of Risdiplam. Anyway, in the same WhatsApp group as you, with a group of other SMA people, and one of our mutual friends said, hey, I'm going to this hospital in London. I'm doing my assessment. And then offline, I was like straight on it, like, what, hey, how, why? And he was really helpful, shared some details, and I got my GP to basically, I wrote him the letter and said, send this letter to this lady at this hospital, because I want to get this drug. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and yeah, and then obviously I can answer a bit more, but about that part, or do you want me to stop there, or?
Yeah, no, carry on as this. I mean, yeah, it's the chronology. So yeah, it'd be good to know kind of then how long it took to talk to that hospital, and then how long it took to then get the Risdiplam delivered as well.
Yeah, so I'm one of these people that, again, I don't know, there's a guy called Stephen Covey who writes a book about the 7 habits of highly effective people.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to remember all of them because I don't do a lot of reading, because books are my worst enemy. And I don't like digital books because I spend enough time on a computer screen and on my phone as it is. So, but in the rare books that I have read, one of the things he talks about is things that are, I think, he talks about them being ingrained in your childhood, and that impacts in your behaviours later in life. So I think from my mother being so determined about sort of me and my SMA, when I found out from our mutual friend, I'm going to try not to say people's names because they might not want me to say their names, so you might have to edit that out if I accidentally let one slip. But I wrote the letter to the doctor, to the GP, didn't hear from the GP, so the bit about linking back to Stephen Covey, I was straight onto the GP. Have you got my email? Have you got my letter? Have you sent it yet?
Mm-hmm.
That took about a week of daily emailing and ringing. So I knew it had been sent. So I waited about a week and hadn't heard from the hospital. So I basically Googled the hell out of how to find the consultant he'd written to and his secretary and the neuromuscular centre at that hospital in London. And I rang them and said, have you got the letter? Wasn't a very great first phone call, but eventually after persevering, yes, they found it. And I was in a waiting list of emails to be dealt with. And then I just kept hounding them probably every 2 or 3 days. Like, what, am I going to get a response? So the letter went at the start of January, so I missed the timeline. So letter I wrote at the start of January, towards the 3rd week of January, acknowledged, meeting set up, Zoom call early February for kind of a consultation. And obviously there was a challenge because I'm out of London area and hospitals and NHS budgets and all that jazz. But she was willing, based on my criteria and my keenness to try the drug, to take things forward. And she wrote to my consultant at Cambridge. Then she said she'd be in touch, and then it went all a bit silent again. So kind of back end of February, I was on the emails like, any news, what's happening, and I was ringing Cambridge at the same time because they suddenly were now, we're going to offer Risdiplam. But I was like, well, hang on a minute, I've already started the journey over here, so I don't want to lose momentum. And I discussed that with them, and they agreed that I had momentum elsewhere, so I was ahead of the curve, so to stay there. So again, just randomly rang one afternoon or emailed one afternoon the nerve muscle team at the London hospital, and they said, actually, we've had a cancellation for next week. Can you come down? And they were like, well, you live in Cambridge, getting to central London, it's going to be really difficult. I was like, no, it's not. I'll get wherever I want to get if I need to. And so I basically did. I got up at 4 a.m, had a shower and all that jazz, and left the house at 6, and had a hell of a drive to London. It was a nightmare drive. Got there just bang on time because parking was a nightmare. So that was start of March. Had the assessment that day, quite a full-on day. I was already pretty tired by the time we got there from driving because my carer was like, I don't want to drive in London. I don't want to drive your car. I was like, it's fine, I'll do it. No problem. So, and then the assessment was blood tests, ECG, breathing tests, but I did them locally at Papworth, and I had my results, and they were pretty good already, but then they made me go and do it again. I'll come back on that in a minute. A physio assessment, a chat with a physicist, signing my life away, a load of paperwork. So fundamentally, you're a guinea pig because you agree to them videoing you, you agree to them accessing Roche. This is accessing all your results. Massive conversation about unprotected sex, which I found quite entertaining because, like, obviously as a man, there's for some reason they don't want you sowing the seed while you're on Risdiplam because your DNA is affected, and therefore I could imagine that the baby's potentially, if you conceive, the baby's DNA might not be how DNA should be. I don't know, but there was like lots of talk about. So, are you sexually active? I was like, well, no, I'm not. So you'll have protected sex. I was like, well, I'm not sexually active. So like, there's no chance at the moment. So, and then it was a kind of, well, what if you did become sexually active? What if you fell in love and decided to have a child? And I was like, well, that's a child or lifting a pint or like living longer. Like they're quite big decisions. They're not like buying a scratch card, are they, for £1? Yeah, that was quite entertaining. And then she basically said, right, I have to send all this information off to Roche, but as far as I'm concerned, it's a done deal. Like all the stuff, the ECG was good, the bloods were good. We'll get you breathing from Papworth. So rather than do my lung function test in London, because I had an appointment at Papworth in close proximity, they did that and got the results. And to be fair, what I had to do though, because these hospitals are rubbish at talking to each other and their systems don't talk to each other. So I basically became a bit of a project manager. So I'd get my results off one hospital and email them letters that were sent, because they love to send you a letter in the post, not an email. Would scan the letter, whack that in an email. So I spent a lot of time doing that. So that was the start of March. And then there was some kind of problem with the prescription, the delivery. There was something, I think, because the London hospital was setting it up for the first time. There was a slight delay, but the first batch came on the 8th of April. So this Thursday this Thursday is the 10th of June. Yeah. So they'll have been on 9 weeks Thursday.
Right. Okay. Cool. First of all, really helpful for everyone listening. The kind of almost the tips along the way of the stuff you needed to do to chivvy everyone along and to make things happen, all that good stuff. So thanks for kind of sharing that timeline and that chronology as well. I'm mindful of our time in terms of the podcast episode. I think there's one thing I want to make sure we get to cover that I'll ask in a sec, and obviously give you the space just to share any final thoughts after that as well before we wrap. I mean, for me, I've obviously, we know each other well, and I've also been following your stuff on Instagram. And I think it'd be great at the end we can give a bit of a shout out to people where to follow you to get those sort of ongoing updates about how you're getting on with it. Because I think that there's a lot more people can learn from you through this process anyway. But you've been sharing quite a lot of the sort of, different effects and the way you've felt, good or bad about having taken it. So from it arriving, I guess quickly about the sort of how has it been getting it in your daily routine, but to share some of the sort of exercise things and the way you've been trying to kind of track the differences, I think would be really interesting for people.
Okay, so I'll try and keep this short.
There's a lot to cover in one episode, but people can obviously follow you afterwards as well.
Yeah, and I'm more than happy to do a Q&A and live with you one day if people want to do that kind of thing. And I was thinking of maybe a couple of people in America that would be worth getting involved in as well. Anyway, so first part of your answer, fitting it into my daily routine, the drug, I decided that the best time to take it would be the morning, because if I was ever out for the day, I didn't want the hassle of having to try and take it with me or to be on some kind of clock to get home. So I take it first thing in the morning after my breakfast, which does, and you've got a 6-hour window. So if you do have a little bit of a lay-in, that's cool. The way I would describe Risdiplam, and from what I've done my research, and I'm not a doctor, I'm not a medical expert, but it's the analogy of, if you have a gym membership and you don't go to the gym, then A, it's a waste of money, and B, you're not going to see any form of progress. My understanding is that this drug is not a cure. and there's no guarantee that your motor neuron function will increase. That's the bonus part of it.
Mm-hmm.
What it's doing is a bit like when you rewire or replumb your house, is I guess it's keeping some of the vital organs at the level, like the muscles around the chest and the heart at the level you're at, whatever the day you start taking the drug is.
Mm-hmm.
If, though, by doing some exercise, I can regain, and you just saw on this video someone give me a drink, my goal is to get back to being able to give myself a drink and try and eat myself, because those are things that I've lost, and they're the things that I find make me disabled more than anything else.
Yeah.
You don't shower in front of other people, but you go out for dinner with people and you have a drink and things with people. Emotionally, I have found it quite hard. So I'm not going to lie, my mood pattern, you'll probably sense by some of my WhatsApp messages every now and again where I'm having a good day or a bad day. And watching other people, you've got to really not compare, because our bodies and our age and everything is so different. But I've found it difficult. I've also found, and kind of getting to the crux of your point, to try and fit a drug, exercise, a career into a life and have a social life is massively difficult. So for the first time, I'm quite a resilient chap. For the first time ever in my life, I went to work and said, look, hands up, I'm not doing well here. Like, I'm struggling. Something's got to give, not forever, but I don't want to look back in a year's time and have, done really well at work, but I haven't gained anything. And equally, if you don't try, you don't know. So as of yesterday, so I'm now, for a significant period to be reviewed regularly, I've actually reduced my work hours. So I'm still at work, as in, like, I can't go to the seaside for the day, and I wouldn't do. So Monday to Friday, I'm still at home, but they are giving me greater flexibility and autonomy to work around the conditions. So I can go swimming, so I can try and eat some meals myself without thinking I've got a Zoom call or a Teams call.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the impression. So that for me is the biggest thing. And I feel a bit of a letdown to them, but equally, for once in my life, I've got to put me first.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, you said it already, but obviously everyone, not just physically, biologically will be different, but like different kind of jobs, different ages, all that sort of stuff's going to be the variables. But as we've said with Emma and the interview with Olivia coming as well, it's just to share those experiences so insightful, and some will be the same as others might experience, some will be different. But yeah, it's just very interesting to hear how you've got on with it. You've been on it a bit longer than Emma. I think Emma's been on about 3 weeks, but any sort of partly any visible signs of strengthening, but also, the sort of side effects. You mentioned maybe a bit about mood, but any kind of physical side effects that are worth sharing that you've experienced?
Okay, so I'm going to do a plug for myself. I am documenting this on Instagram and YouTube.
Yeah. The reason people will benefit. Yeah.
And the reason I'm documenting it is I don't think there's enough out there for adults around that, and that's all I'm doing it for. I'm not doing it to be, and I say this in my first video, I'm doing it just to share. Sharing's caring. But and there are some really good people in America who've inspired me to share my journey. But answering your question, so what was you said to me? So the mood thing is just the mood of me being frustrated around, I'm not bench pressing anyone or something like that yet. But side effects, I had really bad headaches in the first 6 weeks. Touch wood, they appear to have gone. I haven't had the diarrhea or the gut problems that other people have had. Positives. So bearing in mind we're in lockdown and a lot of people haven't seen me for a long time, and now we're starting to see each other again. I would say 7 out of 10 people have said to me that my voice is stronger and clearer. And that's they've just commented without me prompting them. A couple of people have said my posture and the way that I hold my body in the chair has changed for the better.
Yeah.
For me, my circulation is the thing that I usually always have really cold feet and hands.
Mm-hmm.
They are not as cold. They still get sometimes, but the circulation is better. In bed, I can give myself a drink. My iPhone, I'm not dictating as much. I'm typing more. I can use Apple Pay, so I never used to be able to do it because I couldn't hit the button on the side quickly enough. But I can now do that. So they're not, they're not huge things, but like just going to the shop the other day and being able to not have to get my wallet out because my phone was in my hand and pay myself. But I was like, if I could dust my shoulder off, I'd be like, oh yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
A big win for me. For like a non-disabled person, they're like, oh really, is that it?
But your point's absolutely true that they might not seem big, someone without SMA, but to people like us with SMA, it is a big deal to be able to like do Apple Pay, pay for stuff on your phone, and yeah, that sounds really positive. Cool. Well, I'd say we better bring it a bit to a wrap in a minute, but final sort of thoughts. I mean, feel free to give the handle for your Instagram and YouTube for people to follow, but just a couple of final thoughts really on it all for people as well.
Okay, so my Instagram tag is I am Ross Hovey, and on YouTube, if you just search for Ross Hovey or the Smart Chat, it will come up. Bit of a clue there, the Smart Chat on the name. I think my final thoughts are, everyone's choice is their own on this. For me, if someone is offering you a drug that will extend your life, I don't know many people who will. Some people do want to die. We know that because some people, unfortunately, take their own lives. But the majority of people want to live and live the best life and the longest life they can. This drug, touch wood, appears to give that. I think it's a great opportunity. And also, if you are on it and you're an adult, you don't have to be a video expert. You don't have to do a YouTube. You don't have to do an Instagram. But even just on a blog, Facebook group, a WhatsApp group, we're all in this together. And if you can share, then that actually will help the science and the medical people behind, because I think the last thing people want is a drug that has been given to not get approved. So the more data and the more help we can do, I think, the better.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about the obviously documenting in itself, but the reason being for the data to help actually analyze the effectiveness of it, and yeah, if it's deemed helpful and positive, then it can be rolled out for more people as well. Yeah, no, brilliant. All right, well, yeah, always a pleasure, mate. Thank you for sharing those insights, and I think there's a lot more. I think some of the videos you've done are really insightful. I remember you doing the Tupperware containers and like your sort of personal workout routine. I think even beyond Risdiplam, there's some interesting stuff for people around the sort of exercise and well-being in general. So yeah, I think a lot more of value that people can gain from following you and watching you. But for our little snapshot conversation, that was perfect. So thanks for your time, Ross.
No, always happy to help. Cheers, mate.
So, last interview of the podcast episode on Risdiplam, and we have Olivia Webster. Thank you for joining us, Olivia.
Very welcome. Nice to be here.
You too. And it'd be great to, just introduce yourself a bit. Anything that feels relevant about you, SMA, kind of general life, etc.
Okay. So, I'm Olivia. I'm 22 and I have SMA type 2. I'm currently studying an English language A-level because I missed out on quite a few years of school due to illness back in the day. So I've been slowly catching up, and English is the area that I really like. So I've already done literature and I'm focusing on language now.
Cool. That's great to hear that background. And you said you're in North Yorkshire, is that right?
Yep, up in North Yorkshire.
Lovely part of the country and the world. Cool. So obviously Risdiplam is the topic. I think, similar to with Emma and Ross, it's interesting that general conversation around treatment first. So like for you, growing up, were you very aware of that there may or may not be a treatment one day? Was it something you're really hopeful for consciously, or was it not on the radar? Just sort of chat around that part first would be great.
Yeah, so for a very long time, when I was a child, I just didn't even entertain the possibility, really. I was actually very much staunch that that's what you've got and that's that. In fact, I remember, just as a little side story, when I was very young in primary school, reading The Secret Garden, and in it there's a young boy who can't walk due to illnesses and things, and due to being able to walk around the garden and things like that, he builds up strength and he can walk again in the end, which is a really heartfelt, nice end of the story. But at the time, I just thought it was rubbish. I was like, no, it doesn't work like that. If you can't walk, then you can't walk. That's the end of that. Because obviously you have a limited view when you're younger, and I just wasn't impressed. And yeah, so I just refused to put much hope in anything like that. If people would talk about it, I just wasn't very interested. And then obviously Spinraza started, making news, and I really tried not to get my hopes up with it. I was like, yeah, it's fantastic that it's out there, especially for the type 1s and the babies and things. But I'm not going to focus on it. It's fine. But I think subconsciously I must have, because when I found out that I wasn't going to be able to have it, I was actually gutted. So I thought I was fine, and then when I found out I couldn't, it really affected me. So that's when I got right back into my don't look at it, don't keep up with the news with it. If something happens, then it happens. Otherwise, ignore it, kind of thing. And that's what I stuck with until I was offered the Risdiplam, really.
Sure, I think that again, there's going to be similarities with both the other two guests in the podcast, but I'm sure broader community and there'll be differences as well in terms of different topics. But I think there's that similarity we've all had, of it can be a bit binary. It's like a cure, a bit like with The Secret Garden. It's sort of bit of physio, bit of maybe a drug treatment, and we're going to be running around and and obviously that, even in the context of the actual treatments right now, and of course in the future, who knows? I mean, science and medicine, research and innovation, who knows in another 10 years what will exist, right? Everything is possible. But in terms of at the moment, we're talking about treatments, not cures. I think Ross made that distinction. That's probably quite an important distinction. So for you, it was that sort of not impressed by this idea of you'll be bounding around the garden in a couple of months, but
magically cured.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, that the idea of something that would help you was of interest. So again, it's nice for the comparisons, but how is it that these sort of bits of information came on your radar? You mentioned that you knew about Spinraza and you're a bit gutted when you knew you couldn't have it, and obviously Risdiplam we'll get more into in a minute, but just sort of generally, where were you finding out about this kind of treatment information?
Yeah, so I have a few kind of like family friends with SMA and things like that, and my mum is quite involved in some online groups and things, so she'd heard of it, and I remember it was on the news at one point as well. And I think even if I'm not that involved in keeping up with the news, I think even just if you have SMA, you end up knowing things
people tell you
going on, especially with Spinraza, because it was such a new exciting thing. I feel like the treatments have been a bit like buses, really. I mean, there's none, and then there's three at once.
I know, it's been crazy, isn't it? Yeah, we say about the news, it wasn't that long ago, the news of Zolgensma had been the first baby with type 1 SMA in the UK that receives Zolgensma. Obviously, it's this very expensive gene therapy, a lot of interesting debates around the drug and the price and who gets it. But yeah, as so many people got in contact with me, like, oh, I saw in the news about a baby with SMA. So that resonates.
It, even if I wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so true. So yeah, I mean, feel free to touch on Spinraza if there's a relevance to, but with Risdiplam, how did it start to look in terms of what made you actually choose that you wanted it, and what kind of questions were you asking? What things did you uncover around the risks and the benefits as well?
Yeah, so basically I was very lucky, and I was right at the start of adults getting to basically trial it in the UK. So I got a phone call out of nowhere, actually, from Newcastle, which is the hospital I'm linked with, and they had rang up and basically asked if it was something I would be interested in taking. And due to the things I'd mentioned before, I had heard of it. And I said yes pretty much straight away, actually, because one thing I really like about it, like you said, it's not just paraded as a cure or anything. It's just something that can help. I especially was very, very drawn to the idea of it slowing degeneration down, because that's always been my worst part of SMA, is the fact that it's degenerative, and not knowing what that means for your future. So the fact that that could help with that was like the biggest draw for me. And yes, that's when I first kind of, I'd heard of it before, but when I first took it seriously was when I'd got this phone call, basically asking if I would be interested. And then I'd heard of that so I got that phone call in August last year, August 2020. And then I hadn't really heard much from any of them for a few months. And then I had a clinic in December when I got to go, and found out lots more about it then and agreed to it all then.
Cool. And that when you had that, so that was at the first for the clinician or at a clinic, right, around December. So again, it sounds like it was kind of a no-brainer that from that conversation, it said, yes, let's do it. I want in kind of thing.
Definitely,
Yeah. So from that point, was there any other hurdles you had to overcome in terms of tests or any other questions or anything like that?
No, I think it was just quite a big day at the clinic. So first of all, she kind of just described it all to me. She actually helped break down how it worked a bit more for me, because I didn't really understand it, and she kind of broke it down quite simply, which was nice, with some diagrams of how the genes get affected and things, and then kind of how other people have experienced it and kind of what to expect and things like that. And then there was a load of paperwork, lots and lots of paperwork, signing your life away. And then there was the tests. So it was a lot of physical tests, which I think a lot of us have probably done at other appointments and things, but really kind of in-depth questions on just how you move. So like, can you turn your head that way? Can you move your arm in that specific way? And just really breaking it down so that they can keep log of any improvements or anything, which I think is really good. And they do these little tests, which I actually get very competitive with myself with. So it's like, can you rip a piece of paper in half? Or, if you can, well, once you've folded it in half, can you rip it along the half? And things like that. And I actually remember one thing that's really nice about the SMA lot is I remember there was a physio there. So there was my clinician and a physio, and she was doing the tests. And she had said that she noticed with all the SMA people she'd done so far that we were very good at getting around what she was saying to actually get the job done. So there was like a little light, for example, where when you push it down and it turns on, one of those sort of lights. And she was like, oh, well, you turn on the light. And I turned it on. But, I'd made a fist and used a bit of gravity and momentum and just hit it.
I can see
but it was like,
that as well,
no, you have to push down with your fingers. But I was like, but I can't do it if you want it that way. If you want the light on, I can turn it on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So she's been very good at getting the job done, even if it was maybe not in the way we were actually meant to do it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Quite creative and out of the box.
Yeah.
No, that's brilliant.
And that was that day. And then I just had to get some bloods done. And then that was that for the first bit, really.
Cool. And then what was the sort of time from then to receiving the first doses?
Pretty quickly, actually. I can't remember the exact dates, but it was early December that I'd had my appointment. And then it was kind of later December that we actually got our first box, because I remember I started on the 1st of January. I started on a new year.
Cool. That's good. And I was just thinking with Emma and Ross, you've been on it the longest of the three. I think Emma was at 3 weeks, and I think Ross was maybe April time, I think he said. So yeah, it's a bit longer. I mean, first of all, when it arrived, how did you feel? Was there sort of emotion you can recollect?
No, it sounds a bit cop out, but it just felt really weird. It felt as if, as much as I say I wasn't interested in it as a kid, I think there's always going to be some part of you if you're disabled who thinks
it was a bit suppressed, isn't it?
Yeah. And all of a sudden it was here, and I could take it, and I didn't know how it was going to go. You hear stories of some people who have it for a few days and have like a burst of energy and can do loads more. And then you obviously hear people who've had side effects and it isn't very positive. So it's like this big unknown of what could happen in front of you. And I actually got it a little bit before Christmas, because I remember thinking, if I get side effects, I don't want to be on the loo all day on Christmas Day. So I actually put it off for a few days. And then, because I'm really cheesy and sentimental, I decided I'd start it on the 1st of January because it was a new year.
Nice. So it sounds a bit like a mixture of kind of excitement, but also a bit of fear of maybe side effects, or just just generally of something changing, maybe even just that general
definitely.
sentiment. Yeah. And so how was it first few weeks and all the way up to now? And just generally, what have you observed, whether side effects or any kind of increase in strength, or just how's it all been going?
Well, I don't actually have much to report, to be honest, because I've been quite lucky in the side effect sense where I just haven't really had anything. There was one point in which we thought there might have been a side effect, but we've since learned that was to do with something else.
Okay.
So I haven't really had anything in that side. And
Well, that's good.
yeah, which I'm really happy about there,
Yeah.
obviously. So yeah, honestly, nothing really on that front. And I also haven't really noticed much in good things either, which I actually don't mind. I think it's all well and good being excited of having that kind of initial good news if people are getting a really good effect to it. But like I said, I think the degeneration has always been my biggest focus with it. And I don't really think we'll be able to notice that for a really long time.
That's going to be the harder part to measure, isn't it? That
Definitely.
obviously we know, the clinicians definitely that are monitoring it from that perspective know that over a decade there is a week in it, and so I guess that's going to be, and yeah, I'm sure less than a decade as well, but it's going to be that longer time to then hopefully see that there isn't any degeneration, sort of shows that it's done the job, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's been a couple of times in which I've noticed something and then been like, is that an improvement or am I just looking for something? So like I have, say, a can of Pepsi in an evening, and the other week I noticed I managed to like move it across the table easier than I normally would have been able to, and I was like, oh, was that easier, or am I just hoping I'm looking for things?
I also wondered if, I guess because I'm not on it at the minute, and maybe I'm sort of hoping in the future to be, but that just in terms of for people listening, I'm not currently on it personally, but I wondered like if I would try to do more, and
Yeah,
then almost that trying to do more creates a bit more strength as well. So it
yeah,
is a very interesting one of measuring when there's almost like two parallel universes, basically. The sort of one with Risdiplam, one without Risdiplam, and whether you'd have got stronger or weaker in either one. But no, I mean, even if that's the case, it's great that people like yourself on it feel more confident and empowered to move more and try more. But do you think there's potentially that there is some strength as a result of the Risdiplam?
I'm honestly not sure yet.
Yeah,
I think I'm trying, not again the same way I've mentioned how I felt about treatments in the past. I'm trying not to get too hooked on it, so
yeah,
that if there isn't much, that I don't feel disappointed.
yeah.
So
That's
I'm
a
kind
good
of
point.
keeping expectations low, so I can be
Yeah,
pleased if there is things. But I am. There's been a couple of times that I've gone, oh, that might be. That might
maybe.
be. Yeah,
Yeah. That's. I think Ross said.
it is an exciting feeling. I should point out, it's
Yeah,
very exciting when you get that. Maybe.
yeah. I can imagine. And I think Ross had said that there was a couple of times he felt his mood had dropped, and I think he clarified it wasn't like a side effect of taking Risdiplam in terms of it affecting his mood in the actual sort of drug medicine sense, but it was more what you just said, that in wanting to get a bit stronger, but not knowing if it was actually the case, there was a slight disappointment. So I think it
Yeah,
sounds like you're kind of hoping for the best, but trying to manage that. If you're not stronger, that's fine. But
yeah.
again, it's just not that degenerative side of it over time.
Yeah, I think especially with the slower cases, such as potentially with myself. Um, sorry, my mind just went blank then.
No worries.
What was I going to say? Oh yeah, sorry. So basically, with the slower cases, such as myself, I think it's one of those things that because it does take so long, just letting it happen over time and
Yeah,
seeing.
yeah,
But
that
yeah,
makes sense.
I think um before I'd started, I'd actually seen a story of someone I used to know from back in the conference days. And she'd had an amazing experience with it. By day 3, she was already feeling really
Wow.
positive emotions from it. She had noticed she was a bit stronger by like a couple of weeks in. She does a lot of makeup. She's Test Daily on Instagram. She's
I thought you meant.
amazing. She's a great influencer.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
she was saying already that, she was finding her makeup easier to do. She was needing less help from her carers. And when I'd read that before I'd started, it was like, one of those really nervy things to read, because it's like, well, what if I feel like that? Well, what if my life changes like that? But then also, what if it doesn't?
Yeah.
So yeah,
So
that's
interesting.
really try to just take it as it comes.
Yeah. And as we keep saying, everyone's going to have a different experience with it for all sorts of reasons and all the different variables. But no, it's been really great to hear your personal experience of it. But one last question was around, well, kind of two-ish questions actually, but the taste. I think Emma referenced that she was pleasantly surprised about the taste. It wasn't too bad. So feel free to touch on that. But also the main question around kind of how to bring it into your daily routine. You have to have it after meals. So just how has that been kind of fitting it in your day?
Yeah, so that was actually one of the first things they'd mentioned at the clinic, was about fitting it in after meals. And I think obviously a lot of people like to take their meds when they get up and things like that. But for me, I decided pretty early on that it would work a lot better if I had it in the evening after my last meal of the day, after my tea. So that's worked quite well for me, actually. I have my tea, and then afterwards I have the Risdiplam, which just works a bit better as well for me, as in depends what time I get up, and a lot of the time if I'm off doing something I might be rushing to go out and things like that, but I'm pretty much always back in the evening, and I can fit that in a lot better with my lifestyle. So I do like having it in the evenings. And the taste, I think everyone's taste buds are different. Personally, I think it's rank.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
I think it's one of those tastes, actually, though, that I think a lot of people will find quite nice. Even though I am quite fussy with taste and things like that, I still haven't got used to it. And I've been having it for the whole year, and we're in June, and I'm still not a fan.
I love the variety of the responses, even about your daily routine. Ross was in the morning, Emma was at lunchtime, but moved it to the evening, and then you're the evening. So even that was different. As you say, like, you're not so keen on the taste. Emma loved it. But it's very fascinating. And I think I picked up, we haven't touched on it in this podcast episode, but I think I picked up on social media. But you have to take it quite a particular way, don't you, with a syringe, and it can't, is it right, it can't touch the sort of front part of your mouth or something like that?
Oh, right, yeah. So the meds get kept in the fridge, and you have your, obviously, amount that they've made sure that you have the right amount. So I have 6.6. And then, they deliver the syringes with them that you use. And I was recommended, when I take it, to like wash my mouth out or to brush my teeth or something like that. Because they had some instances of like itchy mouth or sort of things like that. And to be honest, I haven't really done it because I haven't felt those effects, so mine's been fine. But I whack it back down quick as possible, get a drink, and that's how it works for me. Yeah,
great. Thank you for sharing that. All right, well, I think we've come to the end of our chat. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we stop?
I think just if there's anyone else who's started and isn't really seeing anything yet, just to know that doesn't mean it's not working, and just be patient with things.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, Olivia, it's really lovely to meet you, because the first time we've properly spoke, we think we might have been at conferences together over the years, but it was really nice to have a bit more of a chat with you today. And thanks for your time and sharing your experience with Risdiplam.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You've been listening to the Living with SMA podcast. We hope you can join us again next time, but in the meantime, please don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. You can find out more on our website at smauk.org.uk.